Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book. You know what time it is, you know what time it is. Guys, I'm going to be reacting to this video. Now, I haven't watched it yet, so I'm actually going to react to it live. So what I will do is I'll let it play and I'll pause in between. Shout out to Africa X5 as well, and shout out to this young man as well. I don't know who he is. Hopefully we'll be able to get his name and put it in the description. But we're talking about, obviously, why black men choose white men. Now, this topic is already loaded. Hey, by the way, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Click on the bell button for notification of the uploads, baby. Yes, Mineral Gang. All right, listen. So this obviously topic is very much loaded. I think whenever people see this topic come up, I'm always conscious and I'm always waiting and saying, please don't degrade black women or say black women are like this. This is why I'm dating white women, because otherwise we're in trouble. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear that. I hope that this is a very clean video where you get to express just as to why your preference is, if it is that anyway, that why your preference is towards white women without tearing down a black woman. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, let's hope we can get that. Let's see what he's saying.
What's going on, y'all? I thought I'd make a video. I was thinking about this this morning when I woke up. I mean, I think about this all the time, but I was thinking about it heavily this morning because a lot of people have initiated discussions with me about this. Obviously, I have my own personal thoughts and experiences with this certain subject, but it came up and it keeps coming up time and time again about why do black men date white women. Now, I'm going to tell you what, over time, I've noticed that it is it's something that's trending more than it used to, 20 years ago or whatever, from my perspective, from my opinion and what I've seen personally. And what I like to say about it is that it has more to do with culture than it does race.
All right. So first thing he's kind of said, it's more to do with culture than it is to do with race. And actually, he actually has a point here. I'm not going to deny that he has a point here. When you look at culture, you take into a numerous different aspects. You take into account food and drink. You take into account music. You take into account linguistical aspects. You take into account the skills and tools of that culture. You take into account the preferences of that culture. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things that go into culture, right? Which is the word culture is taken from the word cult, or to cultivate, which means to shape the way that something is. So the way that someone is shaped mentally and emotionally can fit your circumference that you're requiring to float around in, right? So in terms of obviously dating interracially, if the and this is where it gets techie, because you get white women who have exposure to black culture, if we can call it that, black American culture or black UK culture, and therefore begin to tap into some of those cultural aspects, and then they become desirable to black men because now they have a white woman who is culturally inclined to the black things but isn't black. And you have to understand, I've already done videos on this where I talk about the white female femininity versus black woman femininity. But let's go on. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay, and I can say some of these things because I have personal firsthand experience. And I'll start with just a little background about me. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, predominantly all African-American community for most of my life. In the African-American communities, there are certain things that you do and you do not do. For lack of a better terms, certain things you do, you lose your race card. You lose your black card. And I hate to say it, but it's reality. We got to be transparent and honest. It's reality. So growing up, my sense of reality and relationships was based on what I saw predominantly, what I saw in my own personal life as far as my parental relationships and different things like that. So I can say this, and I'm not saying this is static and this is consistent with every single African-American person on planet Earth. It's not. I'm not saying that. Just my own personal experiences with what I saw. Every black woman, and growing up from the age, from when I was born to, from when I started dating to when I turned like 22, I had never dated a woman who wasn't African American. Never dated outside my race. And a lot of it was because that's a lot of what I was exposed to in our black community. And also it was stigmatized. You date anything outside of black, you will sell out, so on and so forth. So,
I mean, he ain't lying. I mean, if you look at the history of if you look at the history of black people, you can tell that we are very, I would say, discriminatory when it comes to dating. And obviously we're a minority, and that's also understandable. We're the minority, and we've seen a history which has torn us from the arms of mothers and, you know, placed in the arms of slave traders. So we have a history that is rich in trauma, right? So I get it. You know, black people are less open to us dating outside of race because of the connotations and also the history of what's gone behind things. You know, you'll be dating the oppressor in some shape or form. But so I hear him on this. I hear him on that.
Anyway, but I have to say, every single African American female that I dated, either didn't know their dad or didn't have a good relationship with their dad. Was in a.
Let's pause that for a second. So every woman, look. This is what you have to remember. So he said every black female that he dated, African American woman that he dated, didn't have a father in their life or something like that, right? My question is this: who are you picking? I know he hasn't said anything negative just yet. It's just the fact that, again, sometimes we make our experiences the truth, and actually, the truth of the matter is. And I know he only said experience as well, so no, I'm not shooting him. But it's just like, blood, like, what kind of women are you choosing that they don't have their father in their life? This also is to state that there is a particular you know, a trend that we are trying to buck and trying to stop in terms of fathers leaving homes. But to say obviously that, you know, you've encountered all these African American women and all of them had no father figure, I'm questioning what preference you were taking. I'm questioning how you chose these women. By the way, let me go on. I'm talking too much.
Single parent home or was in a remarried situation where either dad didn't know dad or dad wasn't involved, or he was, you know, like a secondary parent. And with that comes issues, insecurities, and other things like that. Hands down, no matter what race you're involved in, those circumstances and situations are counterproductive to a healthy, conducive life in its totality. I'm not saying that you can't be healthy with those circumstances. It's just better if you have a streamlined representation of the way the family structure should be. So I have to say, but that was normal to me. My parents aren't together. Although my dad has been in my life the whole time, both my parents are very active, but they weren't together. So growing up, that's what I thought was normal. Fast forward that to when I went to college. Now, going to college opened my eyes to a lot of things because, to be quite honest, when you look at the demographic of most major universities, you're going to see that there is an overwhelming number of white people in comparison to where I grew up at, where you never saw white people unless they were a teacher at your school or they the police. And going to college is a huge culture shock because you are now the minority. Now, everything in life is not Afrocentric. It's not from an African-American perspective. And you have to now figure out how that applies to your life. So long story short, I got to college and a lot of myths start being unveiled because growing up, you don't date white women. You bring a white woman home, or you date a white woman, and I'm not saying this is my parents. This is society. This is peers. You date a white woman, you're a sellout. You get clowned. They talk bad about you. Every name in the book. You want to be white, whatever the case may be. So, and that white women didn't have good bodies. They didn't have no rhythm, and you can't bring them home. That was stigmatized in a lot of young black men growing up. It was stigmatized in me growing up. Got to college, found out that those things were in large part a myth. But the biggest thing and the most crucial point that I'm trying to make here is that when I got to college, I started seeing things that I never thought of before. My understanding of the world started changing. It sounds funny because I never heard of sushi before I went to college. I didn't know what sushi was. Somebody mentioned it to me. I'm like, what's sushi? I'd never heard of that. I never knew anybody that went on a hike before. Never heard of hiking as much. It wasn't something that black people never did. From my perspective, there's a lot of other things I never thought of before. Organic food. Never heard of organic food growing up. Nobody ever ate organic food. I remember going to the grocery store, and the rare times I saw organic food, I thought something was wrong with it. I thought it was the abnormal food. I thought the normal food was the stuff that don't have the labels on it, and then the stuff that said organic was some kind of weird food, some kind of stuff that got hormones in it or something crazy. That's why they charge more for it. That's what life was like for me. That's what reality was. And I got to college, and I started being introduced to these different aspects of life, different avenues of life that I didn't know about. And so, therefore, my mindset towards dating and women started changing, because now I realized, I really like sushi. I think hiking is a great idea. I love hiking. I love exercise. Organic food obviously is better for you. I really want to eat organic. So then the funny thing is that now when your dating pool starts to be evaluated, now white women become more of the prototype for what I wanted. And I'm not saying it's every white woman is like that, every black woman is not like that. What I'm saying is that that's kind of happens to you when you go to college based on a demographic and or experiencing and exposure to different realities. So
what he's talking about here is that environment played a part in him choosing women. What I fear, and not just him per se, is he spoke about obviously not being exposed to sushi, not being exposed to this, not being exposed to that. And again, this for me is precisely what I'm talking about. Like, there are black people that are involved in all walks of life. Listen, there are black girls out here who are doing game nerds. There are black girls out here doing fashion. There are black girls out here doing governmental politics. There are black girls out here doing track. There are black girls out here doing all sorts of things that will expose you to different ideas and different walks of life. Again, I'm not trying to blame the brother. I'm not saying that he's, I'm not trying to find fault in him. But I always, these are, and obviously this is experience, isn't it? Do you get me? This is experience. So I can't even go too deep. But, I hear these things that are normally reasons as to why certain men don't choose to date white women. And it's because they feel like black women sometimes black women are not intelligent enough. They're not soft enough. They're not more feminine enough. They don't have enough knowledge in certain areas. Like, what do you want from me? Kind of question I always ask myself from people about black girls. Like, what do you want from this girl? Like, do you want her to be like your all and everything? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Because there's black girls that do all sorts of things that will change your idea about life. They do so many different things that are outside the box. Do you feel me? All right, cool.
With that being said, that's what I started seeing. And I started realizing that single parent homes weren't normal. I started realizing that not knowing your dad ain't normal. And I start seeing situations and cultural situations where I was exposed to women who knew how to treat a man, because mom and dad was married her whole life, and she knew how to be ladylike, how to be compassionate, how to be loving, and different things that I think that some cultural dynamics hinder people from being exposed to and experiencing. What's going on? Become more of the prototype for what I wanted. Like, how to be compassionate, how to be loving, and different things that I think that some cultural dynamics hinder people from being exposed to and experiencing.
So here's my thing. See, so now he's made this point that, about, wanting to feel this compassion, this love, and getting treated correctly. And I'm going to be very frank. When I was younger, I remember, there was a lot of different cultural ideas about white women and about black women, yeah? You know, white women you were just meant to sleep with, and black women you're meant to marry, yeah? There was this cultural kind of thing flying around when we were younger, yeah? Another thing was that white girls were easy and black girls were hard, you know what I'm saying? That's another thing as well. Another thing is obviously that we, you know, found out obviously that, it's, and I'm going to relate to what his point was, which was the fact that obviously, you know, he's seeing that obviously it's unnormal to have not two parents, yeah, and this is within the black household, but he wants to see obviously this compassionate love and how to treat a man like a king, etc., etc., right? And I'm like, again, is this a black woman situation? Is this a black woman problem? That you're saying about wanting to see like, and I'm not again disputing his experience because I want to keep that in there. What I am saying is that, are you telling me all the women that you dated up to 22 didn't know how to treat a man? You know what I'm saying? Like, you dated how many women and you didn't know how many of them need to treat you like a man? Like, I am 29 myself, yeah, and I've been dating since I was 15. Very first girlfriend, very, very friendly, very, very loving. Second girlfriend, friendly, loving. You know what I mean? Third, my current girlfriend, lovely, and knows how to treat a man. Like, none of my girlfriends I can complain about didn't know how to treat anybody. Was I mature enough to receive all of them? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like, were they mature enough to receive me? Probably not. Could there have been more growth and learning? Yes. Could there have been more maturing? Yes. But again, that's my experience, but I'm just saying in the sense of, whenever I hear black people talk, black men speak about how, that the black women they met didn't, treat them with compassion. It's not a question as why black men choose white women. That's why you chose a white girl. You understand? Like, let's go with it. Let's go with it. Let's go with it. Let's go. I don't want to talk too much.
And so that became attractive. That became a necessity. I wanted to start over. I wanted to have a life that I didn't have. I wanted to be exposed to things that I didn't have. I wanted to be exposed to the family dinners that I didn't have. And the grandma and grandpa been together, mom and daddy been together, everybody in the same family, everybody got the same kids. It becomes appealing to young African-American men who come into college and be exposed to a life that they could not have previously and that they were not exposed to. So now,
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. You want better, but whose fault is it we don't have better? Black men. So you now have to become part of the solution rather than running away. And again, it's not. I try not to make it negative, but you see, this is what I'm saying. Like, the common denominator here is that when you don't see a father figure in these girls' lives and these them lives that you saw in college, why do you think that is? Because black men aren't doing their job. Hold your role and do what you're supposed to do, and then obviously we can begin to build from your generation. You can be the change. Do you understand? Like, I am not disputing his experience, but what I'm saying is there is always this, black men make this, I guess, this get out of jail free card and say, I was attracted because I wanted all of this. Yes, you wanted all of that. You wanted all those family dinners. You understand? But it takes you and I as black men who are solid in our maturity of understanding of love and mercy and grace, and to choose other women who are looking also for the same thing to build upon. Do you know what I'm saying? Because you're talking about them being attractive about having a two-parent home. You don't come from a two-parent home yourself, potentially. Do you understand? You potentially may not be coming from a two-parent home. I'm not saying him per se. I don't know if he says he came from a two-parent home, but obviously, if you know what I'm saying, like, if you didn't come from a two-parent home, how are you expecting someone else to come from a two-parent home and then say, "I want two-parent home"? Be the change that you never saw, right? And the reverse is also as well. What makes us think? In fact, let me not even go there. Let me just let him play. Oh my days! I need to stop doing that. Oh, come back to me, man. Come back. Come back. Where's it gone? Sorry. It's gone again. Oh, freaking hell. Let's go. So anyway, let me just talk in between the time before it finds itself. Obviously, in regards to this situation, you really want to be able to. Come on. There we go. So we're back on. Sorry about that, guys.
And so you get indulged in this culture, and you realize that this culture is something that you think is better for you. It's more conducive to your success and your happiness. And then you never go back. You never go back, and that is now the standard. And it typically ends up being more white women. Now, for me, obviously, and most black people I know, that race don't mean anything, but that cultural dynamic does. And what happens is there's a certain group of people primarily fall in that cultural dynamic. And then there's a certain group of people that fall in the previous cultural dynamic. And that stimulates the dating pool and certain young men who decide to date outside of their race. So hopefully I said that. That's a lot. That's a mouthful. So hopefully I was able to articulate it in its totality to get the clear understanding. But that's why I think young black men that people see from the outside end up dating white women more often than we've seen in the past. And you see it more often in young men going off to college at these major universities. Because I can say right now, a lot of my friends that I knew when we were younger would never date outside our race. A lot of my friends are now engaged to and are married to women outside of the race, primarily white women. So not to try to make this a racial thing, but I just wanted to kind of open up some people's understanding to the dynamic and give a perspective from my perspective. So if you fast forward and you're catching at the end, pretty much the bottom line is what I'm saying is that a lot of black men date white women because of cultural dynamics. A lot of it has to do with the structure, the family structure, and other opportunities and exposures that young men begin to see at a later age once they get exposed through college or other professional experiences. So thank you guys for watching this video. I know it's long, but I had a lot to talk about. Hopefully you watch the whole thing. If not, skip through it. You'll catch some bits and pieces. Appreciate y'all watching.
So I want to be very frank. I mean, he didn't insult any black women in the making of this. He didn't tear any black women down. So I respect him for that. And, that's good because, most people, they tear down black women before they had to give their example and reason. So he gave his reasoning as to being cultural preferences and the fact that obviously there's a structure in the white cultural family. And so therefore black men are itching for that. And I've got no problem with that. I think the trouble here is that black women are very loyal. And they have been loyal. Since since the time of slavery, since the time of we were enslaved, black women have been loyal. Yeah, black men haven't. Whether that's leaving homes, whether that's not dating black women, that we've not been loyal. Okay, so whilst I understand the notion of a cultural structure in terms of family being attractive to somebody who's coming from a single parent home, how do you, again, I'm reiterating the point, how do we think you got into that single parent home? It's because you yourself have seen another black male abandon the ship. Now, I think at least in this case, it wasn't a custom black woman thing. This was about how men wanted to see a better structure. But the funny thing is that black women seem to be, doing great in terms of academics, in terms of getting better high-paid jobs and everything like that. They are high flyers. And if we were just to connect ourselves to them, and look, the thing is this, I sometimes think when I look at these things, I say to myself, sometimes people jump into these interracial relationships to almost, I don't want to say run away, but avoid the trauma that we as a community face. Yeah. And so when you date interracially, you get to ignore the trauma that you faced. right? And you get to ignore the fact that there's work to do to overcome this trauma between yourself and the black woman. Because as a black male, you experience trauma from police brutality, from communities, from the poverty, from the, all sorts of things that you face as a black male. As a black woman too, you feel the oppression of not only males, but black males themselves too, and the degrading conversation, stuff like that. All that stuff plays into everything. And so, when it comes to this topic, obviously, why black men choose white women, he gave one aspect, one structural aspect of it, and I can't fault him for that. I just like, this is standardized behavior, I guess, of black men to use. Okay, we've got a family structure. That's what I'm attracted to. The fact he likes sushi and all these kind of things. Like, I've become almost uppity as the reason why I actually like you. And I'm not cussing him. I'm just saying that, stating upon what he said. I can see where it's going to. And where it's come from to get to this point. I don't know about you guys. What do you guys think? Like, I didn't want to go too deep into the psychology, but what do you guys think? Comment down below. Let us know. Do you agree? Why black men choose white men? Let me know. Appreciate you. So loaded. Sorry so long.